Thanks, Alex, and good afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to major on the integrated care strategy and touch on the joint forward plan. First thing to say is the integrated care strategy was approved by the partnership board a few weeks ago. Very pleased with that. Since approval, our comms colleagues and hopefully your team leaders will have been socialising it with you. I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow account of how it was created, nor am I going to walk you through the detailed content, but I would encourage you to read it if you haven't already. It's 30 pages, takes about 20 minutes, and to be honest, is about a tenth of the size of some of our other systems strategies, i.e. neighbouring ICP strategies. The key thing to bear in mind, if and when you do read it, is that it's been created, negotiated and approved by all system partners, and that makes it very powerful in one sense. And as such, if when in your kind of working lives and working days, if you're ever in doubt about what the right thing to do is, what the correct direction might be, then some of the principles and aims and ambitions in the strategy I'm going to talk about in a minute can help guide you. And I think that's what our chair has in mind when she describes the ICS and the integrated care strategy as the guiding mind. Could I have the next slide, please? So Amanda has talked about the Hewitt review, and I wanted to continue with that theme to try and put our integrated care strategy into context. So the intro to the Hewitt review, summarised in the grey box on the left-hand side, is remarkably similar, in fact, almost identical to the intro to our integrated care strategy, and it says, for the avoidance of doubt, the NHS and social care are under severe and lasting pressure. People are living longer and living longer with ill health, and sadly life expectancy is declining. At the same time, inequity is worsening, and the integrated care strategy sets out what the partners are going to do about all that. There are 4 aims across the top of the box on the right hand side. Those aims are improve outcomes in population health and healthcare, tackle inequity, enhance productivity and value for money, and support broader economic development. And they are, I would hope you'd agree, all sensible and laudable aims. But we recognised early on in the partnership that for the strategy to be tangible and specific, i.e. not just motherhood and apple pie, then sitting beneath those aims had to be action, and crucially actions that could be monitored and evaluated. So when you read the strategy, I hope that will become apparent that there are tangible and specific metrics and actions in there. Just want to move on and talk about the underlying principles, which are essentially the 3 guiding principles for all the work we do. They are: prevention is indeed better than cure, equity in everything, and we integrate by default. And if we take nothing else from the strategy, I'd like it to be those 3 principles. So namely that preventing illness in the first place, or stopping illness escalating until a point of crisis is reached, is generally better, cheaper and kinder than waiting for the crisis. And that though some of our services are designed to be universal, access to service isn't always universal, and nor are our resources always allocated to where the need is greatest. Hence, when we're working on redesign and on resource allocation and pathway development with our partners, we need to take care that disadvantage is recognised and addressed. And then finally, on integration by default, what we mean by that is integration has to be the default setting rather than a future aspiration. Can I have the next slide, please? I said I'd keep the Hewitt review in mind as we talked, and this slide seeks to lift the headlines from that review and enables us to check whether we're heading in the right direction with the integrated care strategy. I'm not going to go through the whole slide, I know it's busy. But if you start top left on focusing on illness and promoting health, there's a strong emphasis in the review on prevention and promoting health, not just tackling disease, and that includes a recommendation that budget is shifted accordingly. And I'm pleased to say, if you don't already know, that the strategy, the integrated care strategy, is in lockstep with that part of the Hewitt review, and the ICB has already created a fund called the Health Inequalities Investment Fund, aimed at increasing spend on prevention and inequity. Hewitt also speaks about using data and insight across systems to guide decisions, to create, as Amanda has already said, a single version of the truth. And again, our SAIU colleagues working with public health colleagues in the local government are looking at that, and specifically at how that might inform an outcomes framework that encompasses all of our system endeavour. If you just kind of focus now on the bottom left of that slide, this is about delivering on the promise of systems. The review talked about the potential for ICSs to encourage collaboration between partners and providers to tackle some of the wicked issues, and about the critical importance of place in moving from centralised care at crisis to anticipating care and health promotion. We recognise that and would go as far as saying that creating the conditions for collaboration and place-based partnerships to thrive could be the game changer that makes a lot of our endeavour doable this time around, and that will be a key component of our joint forward plan. I won't go through the other examples on the slide, but hopefully you can see that when the Hewitt review came out and we checked against, okay, are we on the right kind of heading in terms of our own integrated care strategy? There's lots of read across, which is kind of helpful. Could I have the next slide, please? In these last couple of slides, I wanted to come to what perhaps might be the crux of the matter. These haven't been tested with colleagues, so they may completely disagree with it. This is the crux of the matter. But if we're being honest, and if you read the integrated care strategy or indeed read the Hewitt review, neither contains very much in terms of new thinking. So as an example, the idea that integration and prevention are better than fragmentation and treatment aren't revolutionary. So the question is, what will be different this time around? And again, on the left-hand side of the slide, you've got the Hewitt review's kind of synopsis of that. You can see that the review suggests that things are aligning at a high level and nationally. So the politics and the kind of like the zeitgeist at the moment are aligning around the kind of potential for integrated care systems. Not least that legislation now has a new duty of cooperation, and there's an understanding, that second bullet point, that culture and behaviours trump structures every time. And I wonder if maybe we should bear that in mind when sometimes we obsess about structures, but recognise that actually culture and behaviour might be the thing that unlocks some of our endeavour in the longer term. On the right hand side is what I was kind of thinking earlier was perhaps the reality. That despite the national context, despite the kind of the top of the house view of where systems are going, the reality is that most of us have grown up in a world where competition and the interests of individual organisations are sometimes directed behaviours. And so what I wanted to remind people about with that reality in mind was that the integrated care strategy says, for the avoidance of doubt, and all partners have signed up to it, that we will now work on the basis that what is best for our population, best for our system, and best for our organisation in that order. So that being the case, could I have the new slide, please? That being the case, I wanted to share some thoughts about how we might start to make the aims and principles of the strategy real. As I said already, there are some specific and tangible aims and outcomes that we can measure progress against in the strategy. So, for example, if we don't see a 5% reduction in non-elective admissions as a consequence of anticipatory care models, we'll know soon enough. But this is more about having the confidence and knowing you have the permission and support to be talking about how we honour the principles of equity, integration and prevention in our work across the system, even if sometimes in seeking to honour those, we might feel like we're a minority voice. So to that end, what this slide it tries to say in terms of making it real is we'd encourage you to talk in your teams about the principles and aims of the strategy, and then working with partners, keep those in mind and be prepared to remind people perhaps that we have an agreed approach and it's been agreed by all system partners, even if sometimes people revert to old world behaviours. Third point really is that there are really very many examples already of the great work, not least the great work that's already happened, and we'd like you to share some of those. with us and with our comms colleagues specifically, who will make sure that they're promoted across the wider system. And because we're in the launch phase of the integrated care strategy, as part of that comms work, then Alex and his team will be launching pledge initiatives for teams to say what they intend to do differently in terms of honouring some of the aims and principles of the strategy. So I'm happy to answer any questions on all of that, but I just wanted to kind of do a quick segue into the joint forward plan. So I've already described the integrated care strategy as kind of the guiding mind for the next 5 years on the high level aims and ambitions of where we're going as a system, agreed by partners. The 5-year joint forward plan is, if you like, the NHS side of the family, or the NHS side of the partnership, and how we are going to contribute to some of those aims and ambitions encapsulated in the integrated care strategy. So that is kind of pillar number one of the 5-year joint forward plan. Pillar number 2 of the 5-year joint forward plan is how we address some of those NHS mandate issues or long-standing issues that have bedeviled us as an NHS for a number of years, the wicked issues, if you like. So elective care, elective recovery, urgent emergency care, primary care resilience and access, how we move from our current deficit position into a long-term financial model that shows actually we are a sustainable system in the wider sense. And crucially, perhaps picking up on what both Amanda and I've just said around the role of collaboration, both at scale and collaboration locally between organisations, how we can create the conditions that collaboration and particularly place-based partnerships can thrive, and can I change the model of care into those things that are enshrined within the integrated care strategy, i.e. a move to prevention, anticipatory care to avoid just intervention at the point of crisis. That's how the joint forward plan relates to the integrated care strategy. It is a work in progress. We don't have very much time and there's an awful lot of work to do, but from conversations with colleagues, the thing that people seem to have most faith in is that actually it starts to get a planning horizon that probably allows us to escape from the 12-month planning horizon and gets us looking into the future to think about, okay, in 2, 3, 4 and 5 years time, what are the decisions we have to make now in order to make our future slightly more sustainable and maybe our working lives slightly more enjoyable if we kind of pull it off.